Go.
Welcome back, my friends, to the podcast that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. I am Mr. Joseph Spiegel. All right, this is my special Midsommar review, since I'm the only one that went and saw it, because Mike is a pussy. So, I went to the movies and I saw Midsommar, and here we go. With their relationship in trouble, a young American couple travel to a fabled Swedish midsummer festival where a seemingly pastoral paradise transforms into a sinister, dread-soaked nightmare as the locals reveal their terrifying agenda. This movie is produced by A24 Films, which they don't ever seem to disappoint. I mean, even their mediocre films still do something.
Yoga hosers.
Was that A24? It's still, at least it was original. I mean, wunderbar.
You hated that fucking film.
It had some qualities.
No, you hated that film.
It's
you
a shitty movie. Overall, it's a shitty movie. Yes. Okay.
Don't play this off. For the most part, they've hit it out of the park almost every fucking time.
Yeah. So, and then it's directed by Ari Aster, written and directed by Ari Aster, who also did 2018's Hereditary, which I blew up pretty big when I saw it. I think it was a flick of the week last year. Both of us are not fans of most modern horror films because they use cheap jump scares and a lot of cliches that just don't hit you. You know, there's lack of originality.
It's just shit.
Yeah. So there are times when certain horror films stand out because there's some major effort put into them. Like when we saw Don't Breathe, done by Fede Alvarez. And then when I saw Hereditary, there's also another movie I saw on Netflix. It's called The Witch, spelled with 2 V's. That's done in a style very similar to Ari Aster's. Very good movie. Highly recommend seeing that one if you like creepy horror films. But with Midsommar, the reason why I was interested in this film was because of Ari Aster. You know, he grabbed my attention with how goddamn good Hereditary was. I mean, the last 10 minutes of the movie, I don't even think there's any sound in it. It's just all visual, and it's creepier and shit, and it sticks with you. And that's the kind of movie that's effective, especially when it comes to a horror film. Midsommar, what I would say about this film is that overall, it's not as good as Hereditary. Hereditary had more character, I would say more character depth to it. But Midsommar is its own beast, and it is unsettling. Just like in similar ways how Hereditary is unsettling, this one is also one. It's so visually striking that it's just, you're constantly feeling the awkwardness of the characters and the situation they're in, and there's always this constant feeling of some impending doom that's going to happen. And what works really well with the style of this film is that almost the entire movie is in bright sunlight because it's made in, it's set in Sweden, and it's during the summertime, summer solstice, and it's it only gets dark for a couple hours a day, and that's it. So when you see a movie that gets really horrific, to have it constantly in daytime, it throws you off. Throws you off from the norm, Visually, this movie is just every single scene. The cinematography, expertly done. There's scenes where the characters, where the main character played by, played by Florence Pugh. Her character's name is Danny, and it starts off with her character. They live, I can't remember where in the States that they're living at the time, but she's got an anxiety problem. You can see by what's in her medicine cabinet. And she's dating a guy who wants to break up with her, and his friends keep trying to talk him into breaking up with her. Well, what happens is she's dealing with a family tragedy. This scene happens where her, spoiler alert, but her family, her sister, who is a suicidal person, ends up killing herself and her parents. By hooking up hoses to both cars in the garage and running them all the way into the house and killing each other with it. Which I don't know how accurate this might be because one of the cars was a Subaru. Those are supposed to be ultra low emissions vehicles.
You still have carbon dioxide.
But yeah, there's still carbon dioxide. So, or monoxide. And
that's what I meant.
Yeah. And, but the girl, the sister, she's got a hose duct taped to her face, into her mouth and everything. I mean, the scene where it goes into the house with a camera and it's going through the rooms, and then you go into the room where the parents are dead, and then you go to where the daughter who killed herself is with the host. I mean, it is just so goddamn intriguing. For lack of a better word, it just pulls you into the whole thing. You're like, God damn, this is dark and deep. And all this stuff happens even before it even says Midsommar, before it shows the title. And this character, Jack Raynor's character, Christian, who's, the boyfriend, they've been together for like 4 years. And he, his friends who, played by Will Poulter, who's like kind of like the comedic relief of the film, even though there's not a whole lot of comedy, but there is some. There's a little bit light moments here and there. Him and the three other friends, or a couple other friends, they're trying to talk to him, this guy Christian, about, dude, you guys are miserable all the time. All she ever does is call you constantly. She gets in the way of everything we're doing, and just you need to break up with her. Well, all of a sudden this tragedy happens, and now he can't leave her now because, this whole thing is just completely fed into her anxiety and all that shit like that, right? So it cuts to 6 months later after the tragedy, and now it's the summertime because the movie starts off in the winter, and they're the Christian character and his friends are all planning on going to the Swedish vacation because one of the characters with them is he's from there. The character's name is Pele. He's from Sweden, this area, this special, I don't want to call it tribe, but this, clan of people that are in there. And there's this 90-year festival that happens, once every 90 years. And they're all going to go back to it. And one of the characters wants to do a college thesis on it and everything like that. And so they're all planning to go. And then all of a sudden, Christian, feeling guilty because he can't break up with her because, all this shit's going on, he asks her to go. And then he says she's not going to go. But then she shows up to the apartment to say hi. And then they ask her, oh, hey, so yeah, we're going to this. And she's like, oh, yeah. And they go, are you going to go? Because they thought she was not going to go. So they go, yeah, are you going to go? And she goes, sure, I can go. And all of a sudden, they go. And then everyone's like, fuck, right? Except for Pele's character. Because Pele, you could tell that he's got like a crush on her or something like that. And so then it cuts to them on the plane, then them driving in Sweden, and then them going on a separate trail and then walking off trail to this village in the middle of nowhere. And you can already tell, like when it's doing these aerial cam shots, like you could tell it's like on a drone or whatever, and it looks fucking amazing. The characters start taking mushrooms, and so in the backgrounds there's weird like distortions happening subtly in the backgrounds at first, and it just totally fits into the whole like tripping of the characters, and then but what happens is it starts to exacerbate her anxiety, Danny's anxiety, and she starts to panic, and she has like these like vision or like a nightmare, a hallucination of like her sister suicide and everything, and then the whole Christian character, he's just like, you can tell that he like still wants to break up with her, but he's like he can't do it, right? And what this movie ends up boiling down to, like when it's all said and done, is this is pretty much a breakup movie done in a horror film style. Like this is like the whole movie is like leading up to this breakup, and of course it's an extreme because of the way that things turn out, but that's like the whole thing. It's like I said, it's a breakup movie that's disguised as this horror, this cult horror film. And so what happens is when they get to this village, everyone is nice and it's all peaceful and flowers and everything's just fucking beautiful. But there's just weird things that start to happen throughout the film that's giving you this vibe that something is wrong and something's off.
What works with this movie?
What works with the movie? Okay. The acting is superb from every single character. Even the characters that are wooden, they're wooden on purpose because it seems like the most important character in this movie is Danny. And everyone else is like, everyone that's a negative in her life, they always seem to be very selfish, self-absorbed, in their own worlds about what they're doing. And so they don't get any, really, they don't really get, any backstory, anything like that. So it seems to be there on purpose. The visuals, there is a lot of psychedelic visuals in the film. The colors, the tension, the whole movie you're feeling uncomfortable. But as a movie fan and as a good filmmaking movie fan, I loved it because it generated emotions and feelings out of me, and I wanted that. Just like when we say we're watching, like when I was watching Hereditary, and
unlike Stuber,
yeah, extremely the complete opposite of Stuber. There's
Well, let me ask you this: what scenes really grabbed you?
The beginning scene where before the titles come up, where she's trying to get a hold of her sister because her sister always sends out these emails, these suicidal emails, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. She's just fucking blowing off steam, right?" Then actually, she does kill herself and the family. Okay. That whole thing grabs you big time. Like, holy fuck, we're going for a ride, And okay, the them when they're tripping on mushrooms right at the beginning when they get to the village, It's great because it's got funny parts to it, and then all of a sudden it goes from funny to dark, and then gets disturbing again. There's this scene where I can't remember the name of the actual ritual that it's called. Without I guess I could fucking talk about read about it.
Anyways, the ritual.
But there's this
ritual in the movie.
Yeah, there's this ritual where because it's a 9-day festival, and on the second day there's this ritual where you find out that each group of people, depending on their age, are in a part of each of the 4 seasons. So like 1 through 16 is, spring or whatever.
Spring, summer, winter, fall.
Yeah. And so anyone that reaches, once they get to the age of 72, that's their cutoff. They have to die. So what happens is these people, they have this huge like ceremony for them, then they get to eat this feast.
So I would have to assume spring is the young, summer is mid, 18 to 25.
Yeah, it's like
fall is 40s and 50s, and winter is anybody above like
something like that. Yeah, normally, but I mean, even though this is summertime, that's when these people have reached the age of 72. These 2 old people, and so they get walked up to.
No, I mean the groups.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. I would have to assume that they have the groups set up from young to old.
Yeah,
yeah, that's
how they could. Yeah, so these 2 old people after the ceremony, which you're already getting these weird vibes from, right? And then as they're going. They are carried in their chairs that they're sitting at these tables with these huge tables, carried all the way to the top of this I don't want to say a mountain, but like a
volcano,
cliff, but like a huge cliff. And then the people walk. They cut their hands, and then they go to these runes with these special markings on them. They wipe their hand, the blood on these runes. Then they walk to the edge. They spread their arms out, and they just fucking dive off the cliff. And it's gruesome. Like this movie is really good at the gore because it doesn't overdo the gore. It doesn't the movie's not constantly full of it. It just happens here and there, and when it does, it's extremely effective and shocking when it happens. Even though I knew what was probably going to happen in this movie because I've seen so many things like The Wicker Man, which this movie is very similar to in certain parts, certain regards. It's still, when it happened, it still hits you because of how well it's done. So like when one of the characters jumps off, her face just splatters on one of the rocks on the ground, and it looks real. Excellent done, the makeup and everything. Then the other person jumps off, this old man, and he lands feet first, and one of his legs is all splintered, cracked, compound fractures, and he's laying there, and everyone in the village starts screaming in pain because I guess they're all connected in kind of almost like a hive kind of mind way.
Right.
And they're screaming in pain, so someone comes up with this big sledgehammer. And I knew when the guy was holding this big sledgehammer in the audience, I was like, he's going to be there for a reason. I know it. I fucking know that this sledgehammer is going to come into play, this giant one, right? And all of a sudden he walks right up to the guy without hesitation and just smashes his fucking head in. And then a couple other people from the village, they grab it and they also smash his head in until it's all of a sudden it's just this big matted, chunk of head. And then, you see the bodies a couple times before they burn it. And so that scene, very, very effective because the characters that are from America, they react in this different ways of reacting. Some people scream like, "What the fuck is wrong with you people?" And then other people are just in shock and they don't say anything. Other people run away. It's a very shocking scene to these people. And then, the leader of the tribe, she comes out and she says, "This is a beautiful part of our life. Sorry, we should have told you, but this is what happens." These people give their lives because it's the circle of life kind of thing. And we didn't want them to die in pain, suffering. So when they reach 72, they kill themselves instead of going through whatever sickness they might go through and dying of old age. Kind of like a dog, putting a dog down before it's two.
Which is kind of weird because they suffer because they throw themselves off a goddamn cliff.
So and so there's times where it doesn't go to plan, kind of like in a slaughterhouse where they hit a pig in the head with the bolt and it doesn't always kill it, right? And it's suffering on the floor or something kind of thing, right? So so that scene works. There's this, where there's one of the characters, one of the friends, this guy, he's trying to do the thesis, and all of a sudden Christian also decides that he wants to do a college thesis on this thing. And so there's this rift that comes between the two characters because he's like, dude, you're trying to steal my shit. I already told you from the get-go that I was going to do a thesis on this village, on this festival, and now you're going to come in and do the same fucking thing, And so and so the one tries to one up the other, and then he starts to get a little too nosy, and then things happen because he got too nosy. And the movie is 2.5 hours long. Wow. And there was it goes by. It feels a little slow here and there, but because of the constant tension and wondering what's going to happen next, even though like I said, I already knew how this was going to end up. Like every time there's a secret in the film, and then the people are very honest and upfront about most of the things that are going on, I'm like, oh, they're only this open and upfront because no one's going to fucking leave this place, right? Ultimately, everyone's going to fucking die, right? So, but it. The tension between the two main characters, Christian and Danny, where they're breaking apart from each other, and because she needs comfort because of what she's going through, but he's also, he's dealing with his shit, and then there's a girl in the village that keeps flirting with him, and then there's this creepy shit where she puts her period blood in his drink, and then he drinks it without knowing it, and then she makes him a pie, and this pie has one of her pubic hairs in it. Because you find out, like, we're looking at these tapestries and things like that with art on them, it actually all these arts on the walls in the houses at the beginning of the movie, and arts on these places that they're staying, these houses they're staying in the village. They all are pretty much telling what's going to happen in the movie. There's even a part where they're walking, and there's a bear in a cage, and finally one of the characters goes, "Is anyone going to say anything about the bear in the cage?" It's really standing out there, and then you don't see the bear for the rest of the movie until the end. By the time we get to the end of the movie, and most of the main characters, from America are gone one way or another, it went from a point of being disturbing to hilarious because it became the cult members started getting more and more crazy. And so right when you get to the end of the movie, like the last 20 minutes of the movie, I was laughing in the theater. I was laughing at how fucking crazy things got. I know it's a spoiler-filled podcast, and I kind of want to surprise people, but just the way that it ends with like,
what about the fucking bear?
The main character Christian, he's forced to have sex with the girl and that likes him, and she's in this room where all these naked other female villagers are standing around him chanting, and he has to fuck her. They drug him and they make him fuck her in a missionary style. While she's laying there, and all of a sudden one of the ugly fat ones comes up behind him butt naked and starts pushing his ass.
What about the bear?
Okay. He gets drugged, he gets paralyzed, and then he gets put inside the bear, like Tauntaun style.
Okay.
And then he gets burned to death with a couple other people inside this special
you didn't have to spoil it.
So, and he can't move, so he just burns to death, paralyzed in this bear costume. I'm laughing my ass off when this is happening because it just got so fucking weird. And then the Danny character, the way it ends with her smiling, finally, like finally she's free. She's finally free of this fucking boyfriend and everything, and now these people love her and they accept her. She's the new queen. They call her the May Queen because she won this little like dancing tournament they had,
right?
And they drug them, and they're on this shit, and everyone has to dance until everyone falls, and then once the last person falls, and there's only one person left standing, they're the May Queen.
Right.
So. Coincidentally or uncoincidentally, she's the last one standing after this long ass dance thing, and yeah. So then they have her wearing this huge goddamn thing of flowers, and you can't even see her body,
like a bridal veil.
No, it's more like a oh my god, like a
bridal veil,
like a little miniature hill of flowers that she's under, and all you can see is her face, right? And she has the final say on who's the last sacrifice is going to be, because there's supposed to be 9 total people sacrificed, like 4 outsiders and then 4 villagers who volunteer themselves, and then 1 person that the May Queen picks. Right. And so the movie ends with her looking right at her paralyzed boyfriend, and then all of a sudden he gets put in the bear suit. And then he burns to death. And I'm like, that is a brutal fucking way to break up with somebody.
Okay, what doesn't work on this movie?
There would have been it would have been nice if the more would have been talked about the suicide of her sister and her parent, the death of her parents, because it's only mentioned like briefly, extremely briefly, a couple times throughout the film, or a couple times later in the film, and then it moves on really quickly from there. Like it seemed like it could have been a more important thing to deal with at the time. But then when I watched a YouTube video afterwards that broke down everything in the movie, there's little hints that in the house there's things that give away clues that maybe the Pele character, who was in America at the time, he purposely set it up so that he made it look like the sister suicided and killed the parents, so that Danny would have a reason to go to Sweden later on. But it's a stretch. It's a stretch. So that would have been nice. What else would have worked? Or what doesn't work? Oh man, I think that it relied too much on the farther when you got to the more absurdity of things, it started to feel too much like it was copying off the Wicker Man.
Okay.
With the bear costume, because Nicolas Cage wears a fucking bear costume in the Wicker Man remake, and I mean, luckily there wasn't any bees scene, but it felt like there could have been a little more depth into like the character reactions to things, like when they happen, like when it was when anytime something bad happened, like instead of people going, why the fuck didn't anyone tell me this, it kind of like moves on to the next thing instead of like dealing with it at the time. But come to find out, the director cut 120 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes of footage out of the film. And so he's going to be coming out with a director's cut that's a half hour longer than this version. So there's a lot of the stuff was part of the breakup during the more and more that they're separating from each other at this festival, the 2 main characters, and Christian and Danny. But I would say that, I mean, even the music is fucking creepy, dude. Okay.
But what doesn't work?
What doesn't work is I don't see a huge replay value with this movie. Like a couple times, like I definitely could see this movie.
Okay, that's not what doesn't. I mean, yeah, movie wise.
Yeah, quality wise.
Is there anything in the movie that didn't work for you other than the suicide scene that should have been a little bit more explained and a couple of other things, or was it just a movie that, for the most part, everything worked?
Yeah. I mean, it's just so expertly done. It grabbed, even when it got a little bit slow, when it got slow at times, there was still always something happening that grabbed your attention. And so I was invested the entire time I was watching it. Even when it went from the point of being disturbing to hilarious. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it still, you know what? It affected me. And I thought about it a lot after I watched it. And so, I mean, shit, dude, this Ari Aster is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he's done 2 movies so far, and both of them are very well done.
What about the soundtrack?
The soundtrack is extremely creepy because they do a lot of like a kind of like a Swedish.
If you could compare it to another soundtrack that you're familiar with, Carpenter-esque.
Not Carpenter-esque.
Like Friday the 13th?
No. No, because there's a lot of chanting and stuff like that. It's very, very culty. God damn it! You know what? I can't think of something I can compare it to. But did it work? Did it pull you in? Oh yeah, it adds to it. Like there's this overall effect of all of it.
Unlike Pet Sematary, where there's the music didn't even bring any tension to the scene.
This is the opposite.
It was boring.
Like I could see this movie being like if they were going to take horror films seriously, I could see this being up for cinematography, for production design, makeup.
Yeah, not going to happen. They don't do that.
I could see it being done because of a lot of our art direction. There's a lot of. I mean, this movie looks like it was made by a guy who's been directing movies for decades. So that's how well this movie looks shot.
So is it memorable?
Yes, it is memorable.
What is its impact on pop culture?
I wouldn't say it would have a huge impact because it's already, like I said, the premise has already kind of been done before. So I don't think it would have a huge one.
Repeatable viewings?
Yes, just not. I wouldn't say it's something you would watch yearly, but yeah.
Okay. Would you buy this on DVD?
The director's cut, yes, I will.
Okay. What if there's never a director's cut? Would you buy this on DVD?
You know what? I think I would because of how visually amazing it is. I think I could learn to appreciate it even more over time. Multiple viewings, yes.
Okay. So for recommendations, is it a matinee? Don't bother. Well, we already know that. Matinee or regular?
Regular. Or see it. Support a movie like this. Give it some money. Keep encouraging great filmmaking, good filmmakers that actually give a shit about the subject matter and what they're doing.
All right.
Hell yes. Like I said, this is not a movie for everybody. Definitely, it's not for everybody. But it's goddamn. You liked Hereditary? You should like this movie. I mean, it's ballsy.
Okay.
All right. So, Midsommar, really good.
Fantastic.
All right. So yeah, please check out Midsommar, and if you also look up Ari Aster's short films that he's done. I've only watched one of them so far, but he has multiple short films that he's done before he started Hereditary. There's especially an extremely disturbing one that's about a half hour long called "The Strange Thing About the Johnsons." That is a ballsy short film, and it definitely makes you think, and it makes you squirm in your seat, just like everything else I've seen him do so far. So it's uncomfortable, but it is, you should see it if you're into his style of filmmaking. So, Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
All
right. Thank you. And then we'll talk to you again.
Have a good one. Don't forget, if you made it this far, hit the subscribe button and hit that bell. All right. Bye. Sharing is caring.
Click that shit.